Hi, well, yesterday was the Division 1 National on the Gloucester Canal. The Gloucester Canal is a venue that I really like for big matches. There's lots of different stretches, banks are nice, comfortable, access is okay, good for walking on the paths, and I think more importantly there's some fish to go at. I don't think it's one of those venues where, you know, you're gonna, it's not one of those venues where it's going to be prolific for everybody. There's going to be better areas, and where the areas are good, it can be fantastic. And then, generally speaking, you get runs of harder areas. But for me, the reason I like it for big matches, especially team matches, is I think it's relatively fair. I think it's over 10 men, it probably evens itself out. There's always going to be slightly better draws and slightly worse draws, but when I looked at the results yesterday and I see some very good teams in the top 5, in the top 10, it suggests to me that over the course of 10 men it was relatively fair, and that's been the case on a lot of matches in the past. Like I said before, you're always going to get draws that probably dictate final positions, but what we don't want in fishing when you've put a lot of effort in is to have an absolute horror where nobody can compete from anywhere. So I think the Gloucester Canal is quite good for that myself. There's always a few fish to go at. Because we'd been in Slovakia, I hadn't had a chance to go and practice. Neither had a lot of the team. We basically had the weekend before to go down, and that was, even then we'd only got back middle of the week before. So like I said, I couldn't go, but a few of the team had been down, seen a few fish caught. There was plenty of bream to be caught, a few bleak, not many roach showing, but that changed a little bit yesterday on the National. There was a few roach to be caught. A lot of the teams had put a lot of effort in. I'd seen that Dorking had put a lot of effort in, Starlets had put a lot of effort in, Gordon League, local teams, and there's several other anglers gone down and made a real go at it. So it was good to see from a team fishing point of view. I like to see people practicing in big numbers. I think that's what it's all about. I drew on K section, last section of the match, and it caught me out a little bit. It was the water was absolutely crystal clear in our section, full of weed out to about 10 metres. Got to admit, it didn't look very appetising at all. Looked very scenic and a really nice place to go fishing, but the weed in the water and the clarity made me think it wasn't going to be very good. I'd heard that the week before it had been very poor up there when they'd had a match on the Sunday, apart from a couple of pegs. Very poor all the way along. But I was a little bit caught out because I'd taken with me ground baits for the rest of the canal where there's a lot of colour. So I'd taken some baits, bream and river, and a lot of damp lean with me, and that was how I based my approach. I hadn't taken any sort of black dark ground baits which you'd naturally associate with clear water. So I was in a little bit of a quandary on what to do, and everybody said it was going to be very hard, and I thought, well, do I just pot in 3 or 4 balls of a light coloured ground bait and hope for the best, or do I do what I would do normally, whereby basically if you're going to feed a light ground bait, you might as well feed it properly? For me, there's a little point in just potting in a couple of balls and hoping a fish comes over it. Maybe with a dark ground bait that's slightly different in clearer water, but I felt if you were going to draw them in, you're going to need to create a cloud. So I mixed up some bream with a couple of bags of damp lean, and on the whistle I've thrown 10 big balls at 12 metres, created a big hanging cloud in the water. It was really deep there, very deep. It was like 16 feet, I reckon. Only just get it on top 5 of my pole, and usually it's a comfortable top 5 on the Gloucester for me. And a metre further out it was another foot deeper still, so I never actually found where it flattened out. So you know, it's obviously a very deep bit of the length. There was some nice cover across to chuck a feeder, so I've chucked a feeder to start with after I've fed my pole line. I had a bit of a line for scratting around amongst the weed, but I was hoping it wouldn't have to come to that. But obviously it's a team match, so you've got to have those areas covered. Patient approach on the feeder to start with. Caught a skimmer about 10 ounces after about 15 minutes. Caught 3 or 4 roach and a perch after that. Sort of 40 minutes had gone by. The nice thing about starting on the feeder is you can watch everybody, see what's happening, and I could tell it was very, very hard. I was next to Dawkins Gary Pook, who loves a bit of a competition, does Gary. He's a very good angler, and he's very passionate about his fishing and his team, and it was nice to be involved in a bit of competition. So I think he was cursing a bit when I had my first skimmer, and then he's had a skimmer about £1, so he'd taken the lead, which was good fun, all good fun. I was desperate to come in on the pole, so I came in on the pole, and I couldn't. I caught a few perch over the next sort of like, and a small roach over the next 15 minutes, but I just felt like there was better fish there. My ground bait was activating. I've gone fishing a lot. I felt like I was reading what was going on quite well, and I thought there's definitely a skimmer in my peg. So I've got in on my skimmer rig and sat patiently, and I've caught another one about 6 to 8 ounces. But unfortunately, I think I'm not sure how it was hooked, but I couldn't quite manoeuvre it over the weed, and it came off. So I was a bit gutted about that. In the meantime, Gary had another one about 10 ounce, so I thought, oh dear, I might be in trouble here. So I've gone in again, fed a little ball. I've had one 12 Oz, then I've had one 6 Oz. So I've had 3 skimmers now, and it's looking like I'm doing all right, to be honest. Caught odd little roach, and nobody's really catching. And then my peg went dead. I was getting bites, and it went dead, but there was still signs of fish in my peg. Now that to me indicates that there's a big fish there. So I took a gamble and went out. Like I said, I'm a rig for a bigger fish again, and I missed a bite, and it barely settled after the missed bite, and I've had a bream £3. Doesn't matter how many times you've been fishing and what situations you've been fishing for. When you're fishing in national championships and you hook a £3 bream on a Gloucester Canal on a section where £3's going to be heroic, I can tell you now, I played it very gingerly. I bossed it over the reeds, over the weed, just to make sure I got it there. I thought it's no good losing it in the weed, and then I played it in this sort of little free area I had at my feet, and because the water was clear, I managed to get it about 3 or 4 feet underneath the water. So absolutely buzzing when I netted that fish. Gary wasn't quite as buzzing, but we had a bit of good banter there. That set me up nicely. Went back out, caught another couple of perch, but it was getting slow, and I could see everybody was struggling. Nobody was catching anything. It was really, really difficult, really hard. And I just thought to myself, right, I can scrat around for another fish or 2. So I did catch like 2 more fish, and I thought I'd probably bump my weight up quite safely now. If somebody catches a bream, bearing in mind I've got some these little skimmers and a few bits and bobs with it, I thought I'm probably safe in terms of, like, if somebody catches a bream, it's going to be difficult for them to beat me with a bream. So the word on the bank was only the very end peg and the next peg in had caught any sort of amount of fish. So for the last sort of hour and a half, I've sat on the feeder fishing for another big fish, but I've alternated that with a pole. I kept having a 15-minute spell on the pole for a bigger fish, and then back on the feeder. Never looked like catching another roach. Never saw anybody else catch another small fish. It was absolutely shocking. So I was quite happy with that, to be honest. Scales came. End peg in my 44 peg section had 4 kilos 200 and something. Next peg in had 3 kilos 780. And then from them there was about 3 or 4 anglers with 2 kilos, and then it was absolutely shocking, like 500, 600, 700 grams, odd weights of a kilo, 2 anglers with a bream for 2 kilos. So I was hoping, when I saw the weigh sheet, I thought, well, let's hope I can be the right side of these other weights. And I've weighed 2 kilos 860, which ended up third in my 44 pegs, which I was really happy about. Just to get beat by those N2, I was right in the middle on peg 25, so I was really chuffed with that. Would have, you know, they guys on the end peg told me they only really caught well in the last hour, so with an hour to go I was no doubt winning the section. So I've had a couple of wins before, it'd been nice to add another one, but just more importantly, you're getting the good points for the team. When you're in a team match, you can't afford to blow out. So I sort of looked at it, well, you know, I'd had a decent weight without my bream, and then my breams boosted me up to that sort of mega score, if you like. That proved because Gary got about 11th in the 44, which was I thought that was a really good performance, because, you know, he's caught and he's had his pound skimmer, he's caught a few other bits and bobs, and that's what you've got to do if you're going to win a national. You know, when you're not in the good bits, you've got to get those decent scores. When we were both having a bit of a ring round, and it was quite obvious that we'd done all right as a team, but we'd had 2 or 3 anglers who really not been in good bits at all. I mean, one of the sections was a bit of a joke, to be honest. There was like 25 pegs that had all caught bream. Then it was like a few on the edge of the bream, and then there was simply 10 anglers who just never had a chance, and our angler drew there but beat those and finished sort of like 15th or something like that, or 15th from bottom, I mean. So all beat by the bream. We had that in another situation as well, so it was a little bit not looking terribly good. Dawkins' result was coming through fantastic. They'd had one angler who'd been in a similar situation, completely out of the bream, and then all the rest had absolutely bagged. So I went back to results knowing we weren't going to win the national, which is always disappointing, but I was hoping that we might get a medal. When it came back, it turned out we had got a medal only just, but we had got a medal. We were third. We were only 7 points off coming second, so it was very close for even second, which I was quite pleased about, to be honest. I felt that, you know, getting a medal on a venue nearly 200 miles away from us when we hadn't had a chance to practice was a good result. Dawkins absolutely obliterated it. They were the best team there. They put a lot of time in, and that's why they won. You've got to have a draw capable of winning. Everybody knows that. I've always said it when we won, so obviously that's come in hand as well. However, when they get any sort of a draw, that's a score that they're capable of. So they won it by 60 points or 50 odd points. That's tremendous as far as I'm concerned. So well done to them, definitely. I love the national because it's the only chance when all the anglers across the country come together and fish in that environment. So I'm already excited next year because it's moving to the Trent on the tidal section. It'll be good fishing. Now, we won't be going to the World Club Championships next year because that honour's gone to Dawkins, so we'll have a free period to put some practice in. However, unfortunately, as I say unfortunately, next year they're looking like they're going to be, there might be some sort of change, there might be something to back to an international style rules competition created in order to create a better, more professional environment, or something very similar to the World Club Champs. But you'll have to watch this, watch the space for that. I can't say really if that's going to happen or not, but hopefully it will. But another example of some great team fishing. I'm off on the River Yare Festival this week, totally in natural venue mode now, 100%. More good fishing, hopefully some roach and skimmers, and then Evesham and so on and so forth. So there'll be plenty of blogs coming up in the next few weeks. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll catch up with you later. Thanks, bye.